let's say the market, for example, drops another 30%, 40%. I'm going to look at that and go, man, I hope it does. I hope that's getting better. And people go, that's not getting better. That's worse. Now, I know what
everything's
they're saying,
on sale.
But everything's on sale.
All right, what's up, everybody? Hey, we're back. It's Brandon and I today. Welcome to Solid. We've got some exciting stuff that we want to talk to you guys about. So let's get into it, man.
Let's do it. Yeah, I'm excited about today.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, we were just kind of talking before the podcast here starts just about what's happening as we have been talking about the last several episodes, all the things going on in the world right now, and how, I think we haven't had any real problems in America for a long time.
Right.
There's been problems, but I think a good majority of them have been made up problems.
Yeah, I would say that most of the challenges that people face are because their life is so cush. Right? It's like so many people, their life is so easy. When a challenge pops up, they think it's hard, but it's really because they're so weak.
Or they think they need to come up with a challenge because they're not feeling challenged. I think subconsciously, as a human being, that's easy to do,
Yeah.
And I think if we look back on these past couple of years, I could argue maybe that, the pandemic was a lot of it made up and fabricated in people's heads. Not saying that people didn't get sick. I'm not saying that, that wasn't real. However, I think a lot of people created their own reality, their own fear because of what they were told. And, it seems to me like if you looked at anybody who was super focused on a purpose, that they didn't get distracted by it. They didn't even miss a beat hardly, right? Because they had more important things or bigger things to be focused on than that kind of stuff. Or the racism that's been talked about lately that I don't think, I'm sure some racism exists, but not to the extent that the media's tried to portray it.
Yeah, well, it's easier to control people when they're divided and scared, right? So if you think about like when is an opportunity to be able to influence people when you don't have the influence or you haven't earned the influence, which is let's face it, most politicians, right? They haven't actually earned the influence of the people. So instead they have to manufacture fear and, other situations and people for them to want to listen to those people. Oh. And so unfortunately, I think, probably, especially during the pandemic, you saw so many people are so scared and probably a lot of it is they didn't understand or realize that fear actually creates stress inside of your body. And the more stressed you are, the more suppressed your immune system is. And it's a fact. This is a biological fact that if you are scared, your immune system is down. If your immune system is down, you're more likely to get sick. Mm-hmm. So just pure science, if that's what we want to say, The facts are that if we have more confidence, we're more positive, we're more excited about our future, we know where we're going, we know what we're trying to accomplish, you're less likely to get sick. I don't have the statistic in front of me, but I know there is one talking about single moms, right? Single moms in America are amongst the least sick people in our population simply because they don't have the time to get sick, right? Yep. They don't have the time. They can't take off work and just miss a few days because they're sick. They don't have the option. So because of that, their body says, no, not happening. We're going to defend this. So yeah, I think when it comes to the pandemic, definitely people got sick. We saw it, right? We know people. We've all, I think, unfortunately lost people. However, when you look at the population as a whole, we could have done a far better job of handling it with goals and being positive. Or how about fitness? Man, how about, I still at this point have never heard a politician talk about maybe we should pay attention to what we're feeding our children. Maybe we should pay attention to what we're eating. Maybe we should pay attention to, are we getting enough sunlight? Are we getting enough water? Mm-hmm. What is your BMI? And I think that goes back to this whole thing. If you look back in the past, so many people are like these body shaming. We're not trying to body shame you. We're telling you that being overweight is bad for you, and that is a fact. It doesn't make us feel different about you. We love you the same, but it is not okay to be obese. It's not. It's not good for our population. It's not good for an example for our children. It's not good for your longevity in your life. It's not good for our healthcare system. It is not good for anybody. It doesn't mean we should be able to treat those people any different. We love them the same, right? But it is okay to hold people accountable to things that are better for them. We're supposed to do that for our children, aren't we?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I agree, man. And you know, I think just you see the people out there that again, I just go back to, they don't have a definiteness of purpose. You're talking about the single mothers. And looking back on my life when I've been focused on something, I mean, I didn't have time for nonsense, you know, or I don't have time for nonsense. And so there's so much more to be done out there in the world. And we got to go do something that is meaningful. And
right.
So I think today, just if we could maybe cover some stuff on all this stuff going on in the world, you could maybe say we're in a recession. Headed towards recession, in a recession, maybe coming towards a depression, what that could potentially lead to, you know, talking about the health challenges right now, people that I think you said deaths, we were talking before the podcast, deaths are up.
Yeah, all-cause mortality is up. Like I don't know the exact statistic, but it's really high. I think last year in 2021, I think it was up like 470,000 excess deaths from all-cause mortality.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So, you know, you could say it's conspiracy theories or whatever all you want, but the fact is the facts are there, and that's what we want to try to do is just, I guess, just be prepared for all this stuff that's around us right now. And you already kind of alluded to some fitness stuff and diet stuff. We can talk more about that. But, you know, I think right now there's going to be a separation of those who are prepared to take advantage of this situation.
Yep.
And there's going to be people that aren't prepared for it, and there's going to be that separation of people that become, you know, more wealthy versus those who become, unfortunately, more poor and poverty stricken. And so, I mean, just I had a quote here. You know, opportunity does not waste time for those who are unprepared. Right. So
isn't that the truth?
Everything's going on right now, and I think a lot of people maybe they're unfortunately unprepared right now, and it takes time to get prepared. I think Mark Twain said it usually takes me 2 or 3 days to prepare in an impromptu speech.
Yep.
And I look at right now, if there's an let's say, you know, the market crashes, it's crashed. You know, the market's down right now compared to where it was a couple of months ago. Real estate prices are going to start dropping and have already started dropping.
Yep.
And if you think you're just going to go and take advantage of this stuff just because you want to, well, hopefully you've been preparing the last several years when times were good, so that when these times do come upon you, you can take advantage of them.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it reminds me of that quote that Warren Buffett always has said, that when people are greedy, be fearful, and when people are fearful, be greedy. And what he's really trying to say is when everybody in the marketplace, right? He's talking from a business perspective, and everybody's being greedy, which we've seen the last few years. You know, you go put an offer on a house, and they go, "No, I want more than I listed it for." Well, that's greed. You put your house on the market for $1 million, and I just offered you $1.1 million, and you still don't like the offer. You know, like I gave you more than you asked for. And so that's greed. So when that happens, you should start being fearful. But then when a recession starts happening and people are fearful, that's when you clean up. And it takes me to another quote that I've always said. I don't know who originally said it. I heard Will Smith say it, where he said, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Yeah.
And so if you're always prepared, then when opportunity presents itself, then you're able to take advantage. And that's the thing that I think is important about recessions. There always is a separation in our population. Some people are able to take advantage of a recession, and some people it crushes them. And recessions and depressions hit rich people just like they hit poor people. And the difference is some people that aren't rich yet get rich during recessions because they were ready for it, right? They took advantage of the opportunity. And so I think as we go into this one, or we're here, right? I personally, I believe we're in a recession. I think it's going to continue to get worse. I don't know how much worse, but I think we're here. And so the question is, are people getting prepared to take advantage of opportunities when they arise? And some people don't see those opportunities because they're not looking for them. right? And so if we can help people see the opportunities that arise in their lives, or that they can take advantage of, then I think we can do some good. Because a lot of times, it's like this. If you buy a car, right? I just bought this new truck. It's the first truck I ever owned. Big black jacked up Ford truck,
So it is a truck. It's a Ford.
It's a truck.
Make sure people are clear.
Yeah.
It's a Ford.
And so I've never owned a truck before. And all of a sudden I see my exact truck everywhere, right? It seemed like everybody has the same truck I have, where I never noticed it before I bought it. But that's really, it was always there.
Yeah.
But your brain does an incredible thing by eliminating all things that you tell it doesn't matter. So if in your subconscious mind you say, hey, this doesn't matter, you'll never notice it, even if it was there the whole time. This is where the saying comes from, where's the best thing to hide something? In plain sight, right? It wasn't anybody was hiding it from you. It was that in your mind it wasn't important until somebody pointed it out.
Yeah.
So right now as we go into this recession, what's important is we look for opportunities, because during every crisis there's incredible opportunities to take advantage of. And if you're prepared, then you can take advantage of them and win big, especially when it comes to money.
Yeah. And the perspective, right? You're saying, I think things are going to get worse, which I know your perspective is actually things are going to get better.
Yeah.
Right? Because things are going to get cheaper, and it's going to give more people an opportunity to take advantage of that. Yes, there's going to be people that lose a lot of stuff.
Yep.
But, my mindset is, let's say the market, for example, drops another 30%,
Yep.
40%. I'm going to look at that and go, man, I hope it does.
Yes.
I hope that's getting better. And people go, that's not getting better. That's worse. Now, I know what
Everything's
they're saying,
on
right?
sale.
But everything's on sale.
Yeah.
And so it's all our perspective that we look in things, because it's not going to do you any good to go, things are getting worse, right?
Right.
And so I know what you're saying, and we got to be real. And
I would say the
understand that.
economy is getting worse, but when the economy gets worse, it does. I mean, it just creates opportunity for people who are looking for it, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately about a recession is that there are so many people that are uneducated about money that they just think that they literally are at the whims of the government determining what happens during a recession.
Right.
And it's just not the truth.
Right.
Right. And it doesn't matter if somebody has a job making $50,000 a year, and say the guy's a police officer and she's a nurse or something like that. They can take advantage and get super wealthy during a downtime far more than they're ever going to during a good time in the market, or in the economy. Just because of that, I think that recessions create such good opportunities for people that haven't accumulated wealth yet. And if they make good decisions during those times, man, it could change their life for generations.
Yeah, it's a great equalizer, I think. I had a grandpa. He used to live through the Great Depression, and he always used to make this statement, man, this generation needs a Great Depression, you know, because those were the times when people were able to build that character. And we hear about the greatest generation, those that fought in World War II. Why do you think they were the greatest generation? It's because they had some of the biggest challenges and trials that they had to overcome. There was no other option.
Right. And
they had to lock arms, and they had to go to war, and not just overseas, but even here in the U.S., right? They had to build everything here. The wives had to take care of their kids and everything. So I think that, in a way, there's going to be some of that's going to take place. I think things could potentially get really nasty. And so, it's time to start looking at ways to get prepared for that. And what can anybody do, not just those that are, hey, and we're talking about some business stuff here. So maybe you do have some cash set aside, good for you, but more people don't have that. They're not prepared. Right. So if you're in that situation, you're caught with your tail between your legs, so to speak. Now, what can you do to take advantage of this if you don't have anything? And you and I have both been in that situation. Yep. Back when you really exploded your financial business was during a financial crisis.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And it really doesn't matter who's the president of the United States. None of that stuff. I mean, so what matters is what you decide to do during those times to take advantage of it. So, I think one of the things that you want to make sure you do is you hone in on your skills, whatever skills you have, and be willing to learn maybe new skills that you don't currently have that could help you. Yeah, I think. Right?
Yeah, I think anytime you go into a recession or any time in life, you should be working on skills, right? It was like Floyd Mayweather always said, skills pay the bills. And it's true. I mean, if it doesn't matter what business you're in. I had a conversation with a guy the other day, and he was just telling me how he hates his job. And I said, man, if you want to change your life, the most important thing I think you can do is learn the skills to become the best at that job. I know that's fine if you hate it. There's nothing wrong with hating it. There's everything wrong with half-assing it, right? So what you should do is learn the skills to become the best at it, and that builds you credibility. And what happens when you...
It's great advice.
Yeah, when you have credibility with people around you, successful people want to work with other people who, regardless of how they feel, give tremendous amount of efforts, not knowing what the reward is going to be right now, because I'm doing this and I'm working hard and I'm giving it my all. I'm increasing my skill set, not because I'm looking for something in the end, but because I believe my character says it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, that's killer advice, because I think a lot of people have the attitude, I'm only going to be at this job for a temporary period while I'm building another business. And so they act that way at their job, right?
Yep.
Like you were telling this person. And if you do the opposite and you work harder than everybody else and try to be the top producer there, you're going to build credibility amongst your peers and amongst your supervisors and bosses, so that if and when you do leave, they're going to know they lost a good person. And so if you need a referral later, or hey, they might follow you into another business.
Yep.
And thank goodness I was taught that as a young age, because I was known as the hardest working guy at the job. Every job I had, I made a point that I was going to be the hardest worker. Show up a little bit earlier, be willing to stay a little bit later, had a good attitude. And through my church mission, same thing, got up a half hour earlier than everybody else, and all those things. I didn't see it at the time, but it built credibility later when I went into business for myself. And then I would give them a call and people actually took me seriously.
Yeah.
If I asked for an appointment or asked for a referral or whatever, and anyway, so that...
Well, it's like credibility you can't teach, right?
Yeah.
So like skills you can teach and you can increase your skill set, but then your character traits and how you apply those skills to things you do on a daily basis are just as important as the skill set itself.
Yeah. So what are you doing? So because people are afraid right now, right?
Yeah.
So the question you need to ask yourself is, what are you doing right now? You need to be very aware. People are watching you, whether you realize it or not. They're watching you, and so if you're kind of in the fetal position and you're being a wimp, and maybe you feel like a wimp right now,
or maybe you're just waiting.
Yeah.
Nothing good came to anybody who ever just waited around for something to happen.
Right.
So
you've got to find ways to get out of that. Get around some ambitious people. Get yourself out of your house. Get yourself out in the world, and work on that. I think we've all felt weak at times. We've all felt unsure of ourselves at times. I totally relate to that. I understand that. But if I stick to myself and try to fix it myself, it just gets worse.
Yeah, always, because fear begats more fear, right?
Yes.
So if you sit back and it's just you, naturally that energy is just going to continue to grow. Where if you get out and you get around some other people to go, hey, we're scared too, but we're just going to run towards, like I think people that I respect so much are like first responders. Like you imagine they have to run into the fire. They're not, everybody else is running away and they're running into the fire. I think theoretically we have to do that with life for opportunities to present themselves. Yeah. Because if you think about a house burning down and there's this firefighter running into the fire, if that's happening in our life in business, for example, right? There are going to be some businesses, there are going to be people when a recession hits that people are over leveraged. Maybe their home is too big. They got they could afford it while times are good, but then a recession hits, maybe they get a pay decrease or something happens. All of a sudden they can't afford their house. Now there's a fire sale. And so if you're the one that's running towards it, you get the opportunity to be able to clean up, so to speak, and say, hey, I'm here to save the day. I'll be glad to take that off your hands.
Yep.
And you get incredible deals, which over time become, they make you look smart. And it's not that, you were smart, is that you were prepared for an opportunity and you had the right thinking about it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we need to talk about yesterday, what you did yesterday, because I think this has to do with being prepared, okay? Because we're talking about hard work and fitness and all that stuff. So this is crazy. So Jeff sends me this message yesterday. Hey, I just completed the Murph workout in 36 minutes and 47 seconds or something. Is that what it was?
Yep.
And the record's 34 minutes. Like we're talking about like the professional CrossFit guys.
Yeah.
And you did it when it was how hot outside?
I don't know. It was probably 100.
Probably 100. And you wore the vest, 20-pound vest.
Yep,
so
I did.
You legit did the mile run.
Yep.
100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and a mile run at the end.
Yes. Yeah, the way I did it is I ran a mile, and then I do 20 sets of 5 push-ups, and then 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, 15 air squats, and then I just do that 20 times, and then I run a mile again. Yeah, and I didn't know I was going to do it that fast. I was actually trying to get here. I had an appointment with you, right?
Yep.
And so I didn't have that much time. I'm doing 75 hard. I have to get my workout in. I only had an hour, and I'm supposed to do a 45-minute workout. And I think doing a 30-something minute Murph.
I think you're covered, dude.
You think that's good?
I think you're
okay.
covered.
I was just making sure. I think so too. But yes, I was trying to get it done, and so what I did is I timed my first mile just so I knew how, because I started. I told you the other day I didn't know I'd done it, and I didn't know if it was a good time or not. So I started looking at it and then how these guys do it. And the guy that holds the record, I think he ran a 6-minute mile to begin with. And so I just look at his strategy and what he did and just kind of like try to implement it a little bit. So I paid attention to my first mile, and it was 8 minutes. And then I rested for a minute before I got into my pull-ups, push-ups, and squats. And I didn't look at the timer. I just went straight through as fast as I could, as hard as I could. And then when I picked it up, it was like 25 minutes. And I'm like, dang, dude, if I ran a 10-minute mile,
35 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty spent at that time, but I think I could do it. So I just put my phone back in my pocket and went for it. I just ran as hard as I could, and I got back, and
it's amazing.
Man, I was impressed with myself, to be honest with you. I didn't think I was going to be able to do that. But
well, I'm sure doing some research and finding somebody who had done it, and you looked at their splits. Then you knew what you had to do.
Yeah.
And that's no different from that. People ask, well, why do you do that? Why would you do that, Jeff? You're not like a professional athlete. What are you doing that for? Well, there's so many life lessons in that yesterday. So many life lessons. One is you found someone who's successful at it, and you copied them. Big key right there.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most important.
Yeah. I mean, how many people are successful out there right now? And if you'll just get out, people go, I don't have anybody like that in my current circle. Well, you need to go find a new circle. Go offer to pay. Hey, if you know someone who's super successful, this might sound crazy. Pay them $500 to go to lunch with them.
Or if you don't have $500, volunteer somehow.
Give them a service. Yeah,
yes.
I'll come work for you for free for a couple weeks or something, right? And get yourself out there around those people. So I think that's one huge key.
Yeah.
But I think also in doing it, it was not easy to do.
Yeah, no.
You probably were in a very dark place for a lot of that.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
It hurts.
It hurts.
But I think that's another thing, though, is so many people in life are always trying to avoid pain. I've never, honestly, I don't think that I've ever tried to avoid pain. And that could come back to boxing and sports or whatever. But for me, I believe that especially physically, when I'm putting myself through pain like that, I just try to remind myself, this is when I'm growing. This is when I'm getting better. When I'm doing what most people aren't willing to do. When I'm doing what most people say is hard and I'm pushing towards that thing, how is anybody going to be able to compete with me when I'm willing to do hard things when they're trying to be comfortable?
Yep.
And so, yeah, I think it's advantageous for people to put themselves in hard situations and stay uncomfortable and get comfortable being uncomfortable.
And do it before you have to do it.
Yeah.
You didn't have to do that yesterday, but you're preparing yourself for who knows what, right? I mean, not just physically, but mentally. That does so much for you. It does so much for your self-confidence.
Yeah.
And, anyway, I'm sure your wife thinks you're sexy from doing it probably too, right?
I hope so.
Kelsey's here. She goes, oh, yeah, of course, right? So that's awesome.
Thank you, dude. Yeah, I think that, when it comes to like fitness or just a lot of it's just mindset, right? If we're going into a recession, which we are, we're going to come out of it sometime, and we will.
Yeah, I don't mean to cut you up, but just as you said that, Warren Buffett says everything that can will eventually come to an end.
Yeah. And so it's like people forget that you get this opportunity for 12 or 18 months most likely. So the question, most people don't even know we're in a recession before we're out of it, right? It's usually announced, hey, we were in a recession after we came out of it. I think this one is pretty obvious for most people.
Well, it depends if you're interviewing Mr. Biden or they disagree with you, Jeff. They say we're not in a recession. Things are good. The economy's strong and solid.
So anybody who says that, okay, I don't care. So let's be fair to anybody regardless of their political beliefs.
No.
But if you're
not be fair.
you don't want to be fair, right? But let's think about this for a second, because that's a good statement.
Yeah.
In our economy, right, we're paying $5, $6, $7 a gallon of gas.
Yep.
Real estate prices are at an all-time high. And if somebody can't afford to own a house, they've got to rent, and rent prices have increased incredibly. Like, it is crazy the amount that rent prices have increased for homes. I mean, they've just, and that will continue to happen as inflation goes up, because as rates go up, less people can afford to buy a home, which means they have to rent, which means people that own rental properties can increase the rents for those people because they don't have anywhere to go anyway.
Right.
So you think about all these things are happening, but income has not gone up. So as that has not gone up, what goes down? The majority's purchasing power, which impacts our economy. And a recession is defined by the lack of growth for 2 quarters in a row, right? And so if we don't have growth for 2 quarters in a row because people don't have purchasing power, I don't care what a politician says about what's happening in our economy. I think anybody with some brains knows that people have less purchasing power, and they're buying less right now than before because they're worried about gas prices. They're worried about a new vehicle being 20 or 30% higher.
Right.
They're worried about flights being so much more. If they want to go see some family, a lot of people just stop doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And so by definition, that says we're in a recession. So think about this. If there's a politician telling you that we're not in one, and it's very obvious we are, if they're willing if they're not willing to confront a situation when it's that obvious, imagine what else they're willing to hide.
Absolutely.
To control, to do all those things. So that's the issue I have a lot of times, is like, hey, man, it's obvious. You don't need to lie to us about something that's obvious.
No, we got to use common sense. I mean, they printed a bunch of money, and the government doesn't produce anything. They do not produce, they consume.
Yes.
And so all they did was print a bunch of money, and they didn't produce anything for that money.
No.
So naturally, there is a much bigger supply of money out there. There's not more production to offset that, and so guess what's happening? So anyway, I just think it's that's just the money side of it, and then it leads to everything else. And then you see some crazy stuff like God, we're going all over here today, but like all the cattle that did you see that big?
Yeah, I actually
hundreds of cattle that died.
So on social media. So here's another thing, and I buy bulk beef. Mm-hmm. So I usually buy a half cow or a whole cow once a year. And we just purchased a whole cow from a big rancher here locally. And I asked them about that, and they said, hey, look, it's a pretty small community, people that are, have big ranches and are selling bulk beef, and said it's pretty normal for that to happen once in a while. And what happened with that particular, and this is, again, from somebody that I know that I just bought a cow from. Oh. And she said, I know that the owners of that ranch, and what happened was they live in an area where summer came earlier than normal.
Okay.
And the problem with that was the cattle hadn't had a chance to shed their winter coats yet. So now it was warmer than normal. They hadn't shed their coats yet. And they're a black Angus cow, so they all have black fur, which allows them, obviously it's normal. If you're wearing black, it's going to attract more heat.
Okay.
So then they were mostly black cattle as well. And then it only takes 48 hours for cattle to die from heat exhaustion. So by the time they knew that this was happening, and obviously, I mean, it did. I think, there was a heat wave that came through here too. That was like, dang, spring's over already.
Yeah. Right.
And so, she says that's what happened. And, so I think there's always things to, again, going back to fear, whether it's, in the world today, so many people are just trying to spread fear. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's important to remember that no matter what happens in our life, you're never going to have a positive result with a negative emotion.
Right.
So if you want to succeed in anything, you got to find the positive in it. Right?
You do. So I would ask this too. So along with that kind of thing happening, if it died from the heat wave, another question I'd have is when you see some of these facilities that are these food facilities that are just burning down right now.
Yep. It's crazy.
I don't know, right? I mean, and again, to create fear, but also, I think you got to be aware there could likely be a food shortage coming,
Yeah. So whether it was designed or not, I think that's a very realistic thing. And here's why. And this is totally my opinion. I've never done research on it or whatever. Here's what I think. If you go back, I was telling my wife this morning, I found this Vogue article, right? And this Vogue article in 1970 something, I'll post it on my social media. Their diet plan. Now this is in Vogue, okay? You want to know what their diet plan was? For breakfast, steak and eggs, a glass of wine, and black coffee. For lunch, steak and wine. For dinner, steak and finish the bottle of wine. Now, this was in 1970. And anybody knows, if you just go Google pictures of people in the 1970s, 1960s, 1950s, 1940s, and you look at people on the beach, you almost can't find somebody who's overweight.
Yeah.
But if you look at Vogue now, right, and you look at their diet plans, they're what? Plant-based, vegan-based diets.
Yeah.
That's fine if somebody wants to eat like that. Here's the problem. They're not very nutrient-dense diets. You have to eat a lot of food. Anybody knows if you're a vegan, which I was, right? If you're a vegan and a guy like me, I'm 180, 185 pounds, to keep my weight, eating is a full-time job.
Yeah.
Because the diet that I'm eating is not very calorically dense, right? So you have to create a massive amount of food. If I have to eat that much food just to keep me, imagine how do we provide for all these people with a plant-based and vegan? So what happens is naturally the food shortage is going to happen simply because of people's diet.
Well, they're also addicted to processed foods, and that's all they know how to eat. And that's all they know
True.
how to access, and that's the right.
Yes, their diets are not nutrient-dense diets. Versus, think we buy a half cow and we pretty much only eat meat, and it'll last us 6 months or a year. And so we go to a farm, we buy one animal, and it lasts us for 6 months or a year. If you're a vegan, I'm sorry, you're going to the grocery store every 3-4 days, and you're constantly consuming, you're constantly taking from the food supply and never really giving anything back.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that if we can somehow, as people, saying, okay, how does the system work and how can I make the system stronger? And the way you make the system stronger is stop taking from the system, right? If you stop taking from the system will get stronger because now it has more resources and fewer to people dependent on it. Kind of sounds like the government, like welfare, like anything, right?
Yeah.
And to me, that these are reasons why I think people should hunt, why I think people should eat beef, because they're great resources for food while you're really not taking a whole lot from the system itself, because the system is designed, right? And especially in America, it's designed around the farm.
Yeah.
And the farm hasn't been around forever either.
Right.
Think about that.
Yeah,
I
true.
mean, prior to 1930, there was no industrialized farm.
Yeah. Crazy. I mean, you can survive. If you ate 2 ribeyes a day, that's got everything you need, right?
Yeah. And really to survive and thrive, really, you don't even need that much. The average American could eat a steak a day and get more nutrient-dense food from that one steak than they're eating 4 or 5 times a day at McDonald's and wherever else they eat.
Yeah. And if you read that book, it's called the Carnivore Code, right?
Carnivore Code, yeah.
Kind of talks about all that.
Yeah, he does a pretty good job. And honestly, there's a lot of great books, about the diet and all that kind of stuff. But again, for me, it goes back to this thing like, all right, what am I doing to make my community better, to make my country better? Like, what can I do to make it better, right? I want to make myself better, but I want to make it better for the people around me too.
Yeah.
And so often, I was telling Kelsey the other day, you know what I notice? Okay, and this is true. If you go to a liberal city, okay, LA, Chicago, New York, one of these big liberal cities,
Yep.
and you go to a coffee shop, okay, you walk in, you sit down to have breakfast or something like that, and you say, hey, can I get a coffee? They'll say, okay, that's $4.15 or however much it cost. And then we say, hey, can I get a refill? They don't give you refills. Not in a liberal city, right? You get 1 cup of coffee. This is what you paid for. You go to Texas and you go sit down at a breakfast spot and you say, can I get a cup of coffee?
It's free.
They'll fill up your coffee all day long.
Yeah.
Right? Why? Because what happens is what I've noticed, okay, in a more conservative philosophy, people are much more reliant, where they believe that, hey, I need to provide more for us, right? What can I do to provide more for the people around me? Versus a lot of times when you have a liberal city, so many people are taking from this system, right? Whether it's food stamps, whether it's public transportation, whether it's public housing. So many people think it's okay to take. And how often do you hear someone say, hey, what are you giving back? Because it's always just about taxes. But you don't have to pay taxes to give back, right? You can give back in a lot of other ways, by your lifestyle, by your effort, by over-delivering, all these kind of things. So for me, the same thing it takes to succeed in business and succeed in life and succeed in your fitness is that also the same thing it will take to fix our country.
Yeah.
It's like you were saying during hard times, World War II, that's when people get united. Right. So we build the best relationships during hard times, right? And that's how human beings work. When stuff gets hard, we get closer. And so it's okay for times to be hard. I actually think hard times are good for people. I think about Las Vegas. We lived in Las Vegas for 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's a unique city, man. And it's Las Vegas, and it's this very shallow, nice car, fancy clothes, and that's really what people celebrate. But after the shooting in Las Vegas, that shooting turned our city into a community. And it was crazy for us to be a part of watching that city come together. I think the Golden Knights helped that as well. The Golden Knights and the shooting happening at once, we watched Las Vegas become a community. It was really special to see, but it was a hard time for people,
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. Well, man. Yeah, well, good. I mean, so specifically, I mean, some things that we might be able to do to help give back. I think number one, we got to control what we can control.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff we can't control out there. So I've always tried to look at it as, okay, what can I do to make sure that we're prepared, my family's prepared? And, a couple things that I just jotted down here today. Along with the skills, looking for ways to increase your cash flow right now.
Decrease expenses.
Decrease your expenses. Don't get yourself over leveraged, right? And if you are in that situation, well, hang on tight and do your best to start correcting that.
Yeah, I would suggest that if anybody feels like they're over leveraged right now, it's okay. Like if you need to get out of a situation, you're like, dang, let's say your house is, let's say you got a house and it's worth $650 right now and you owe $550 on it. And you go, dang, if the market drops another 10 or 20%, I'm not going to be able to get out of this thing, right? You're better off selling that for a little bit less than it's worth and getting out from underneath it. Yes. Yeah. Then you are waiting and trying to hold on.
If you think you can't afford that payment when it gets bad, right?
Yeah. And
otherwise, hang on to it long term probably. But
yeah, and what people need to know is that odds are that if you have a job or even a business, for example, when there's a recession, you want to grow your income, but what happens to the majority of people? Usually their income gets suppressed a little bit. So if you're the way I've always done it, if my income got cut in half tomorrow, could I still afford this thing? And if my income got cut in half and I can still afford whatever it is I'm going to buy it. If your income gets cut in half tomorrow and you can't afford your house, sell that thing. If your income gets cut in half tomorrow and you can't afford your house and all your cars, get rid of them. It's okay to downsize, I guess, if you will, to take one step back so you can take 2 or 3 steps forward and take advantage of a recession.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And there's a lot of people out there that just aren't yet in that situation where they can even do that yet because they're just getting started, or maybe they did lose a job and lost everything for whatever reason. But that is a really good place to get yourself to. It's a good philosophy to have. I agree with that 100%. Yeah. I mean, what is this, like 60%-ish people live paycheck to paycheck right now, meaning if they lost their income, they couldn't even survive an entire month.
The problem I have with that, though, is the majority, not all of them, but the majority of those people think 40 hours a week is a long work week.
Yep. No, for sure. And the stats are, I think, based on that, right? On a 40-hour work week.
Yeah, they are based on that. Yeah. So okay, if that's you and you're working 40 hours a week and you're like, dang, I'm just not able. Well, how about you work 80? How about if you have a full-time job and you're working 40 or 50 hours a week? There's 168 hours in a week.
Yeah.
So even if you slept 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's 56 hours.
Yep.
So you've still got 110 hours to work.
Well, I think also, you got to work on getting out of the mindset that the job is the answer. You may have to have a job for right now, but there's so many ways to make money right now. If you have to go around your neighborhood and collect a bunch of their junk and go sell it at a garage sale and
Seriously.
Start selling stuff that way online. And that's probably going to pay you quite a bit better than a job, you know?
No doubt about it. And that is looking for a solution. So that's not saying, oh, I have this problem. That's waking up every day and say, I need to look for a solution. A solution to what? Making more money. Mm-hmm. How can I get more set up financially? Not decreasing the pain, right? Because what a lot of people do is they go, you know, they'll try to decrease the pain. Well, I work hard already. Well, I do. It's just not working, right? And they're like trying to justify why they're not winning. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with, I think a lot of times when people get overweight, let's face it, when we're overweight, I've been there too, we don't feel good about ourselves, mm-hmm. right? And we know, because deep down we know this isn't healthy, it's not good for me. And so naturally, I think that people want people around them to make them feel comfortable and take off the pressure, right? And say, it's okay to be overweight, it's okay to be broke. No, it's not, right? We need someone in our lives to tell us the truth and say, look, enough's enough. You need to lose some weight. You need to start eating good. You need to get after. You're going to have more energy. Your mind's going to be better. You're going to be able to make better decisions. It shows discipline, control. But then the same thing goes into making money, right? It's like if you say, yeah, I got a 40-hour-a-week job and it's not providing. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go find a way to make some more money, and I'm not just going to provide. My family's going to thrive.
Yep.
You know, and just that mindset. And I think that thinking, you know, if someone was asking me what's the first thing I need to do is going into a recession, is make sure your thinking's right. And I would turn off the television. Like, seriously, the first thing I would do, pawn your televisions. Yeah. If you have televisions in your home, pawn them.
Yep.
Stop looking at social media.
If you don't watch the news, life's pretty dang good, man.
Or social media.
Or social media. Yeah. Absolutely.
Which is really the new school news, right?
Yeah, no, it is.
So, yeah.
And the majority of a lot of it's fake. You know, not real, right?
Most of it's fake,
not
dude.
The truth.
Yeah, even like these gurus on there. You know, I've got all this stuff and all this success, and you know, really, it's all a bunch of BS.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think even making sure you have some food storage set aside. I wanted to talk about it a little bit because what type of food storage to have. I mean, we have. My family, we've got a bunch of freeze-dried food storage. Actually, it's just dehydrated. I don't know if it's freeze-dried, whatever the
MRE type stuff.
Well, it's more like the Mountain House type stuff. We got a bunch of that, which is, I think, okay, right? Yeah. I mean, it'll work. Yeah. But if you've ever eaten those type of meals for like a week, like I have on a hunt, it gets pretty old pretty fast. Yeah, it's very high sodium. So Lex and I were talking about this because we've got a neighbor that wants to go in on I think it's a freeze dryer. Mm-hmm. And I guess the difference between freeze dried versus dehydrated is the freeze dried, I think, dehydrates like up to 98% of it versus the dehydrated is only 80% dehydrated. Okay. But apparently, freeze dryer, and they're a little more money. I think they're around $3,000. When you dehydrate like a steak or something like that, and you rehydrate it, apparently, from what I've read, it tastes the same.
Wow.
And I think that's important to be looking at is what do you have as far as food storage goes that you would even eat it right today.
Right.
Because, I mean, if things got that bad and, we have to have our own water, which hopefully I think people should have a couple 55-gallon drums of water, or you guys got a pool, so you got all your water there you need, right? Yep. But you got to have your water, and then you've got to have food, and ideally food that you and your kids like.
And you can thrive from still.
Yes, that's nutritious food. And that's why I think these, and so we're looking into one of those because, again, I think the dehydrated stuff's okay. Yeah. We won't die living on that, but we might feel like dying if we, you know what I mean?
Seriously, huh?
So,
and I think mentality, when you eat a certain, and that goes another thing back to diet, right, and nutrition. The way that you eat is for sure going to make you feel a certain way. Mm-hmm. Which impacts the way you think. And so I think having our mind right. If you ever watch that.
You don't want your wits, man, right?
Yeah, it's like, what's that? Naked and Afraid. You ever seen that?
Yeah.
The hard part about challenges like that is really just the mind.
It is.
And if you can keep
eating enough, right, like they're always focused on eating enough fat, right? Because your brain needs that fat to function and warmth and everything else. And that's their biggest challenge. They can typically find some protein or some berries to eat. Yep. But it's getting the fat in their diet that's the key. So.